Pack your things and leave, my father said, his voice steady, measured, practiced. If you won't support this family, you don't belong under this roof. The room went quiet. My brother stared at his plate. My mother didn't look up. No one challenged him. That was how authority worked in our house, declared once, enforced forever. I set my fork down. I said I can't cover it anymore. I replied, "Not this time." My father leaned back, folding his hands like he was closing a deal. "You've always covered it. That's what you do." I looked at him. "That's what you decided." He stood. "This house carries my name. I built it for this family. You don't get to live here if you're going to act selfish." I nodded. Not in agreement. In recognition. "Then we're done." That was the moment everything shifted. The story you are about to hear is a fictional work created by the writing team of the channel Revenge World, inspired by real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotion, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. My father watched me like he expected tears. Bargaining, something familiar. When none came, his jaw tightened. "Don't come back asking for forgiveness." "I won't," I said. And I meant it. I went to my room and packed one bag. My mother finally spoke from the doorway. "Allison, you know how your father gets—" "I do," I said. "That's why I'm leaving." My brother cleared his throat. "This didn't have to get ugly." "It didn't," I said, meeting his eyes. "It just had to get honest." At the door, my father added, "You're making a mistake." I turned the knob. "I've been paying for yours for 5 years. Outside." The door closed behind me with a final sound that didn't echo. I stood on the steps, breathing in air that felt colder and cleaner. If this opening feels familiar to you, stay with me. What happened after I left changed everything and not the way they expected. I sat in my car with both hands on the steering wheel, waiting for something to break inside me. Panic, grief, regret. That was how it usually went. But nothing came. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother appeared, then disappeared before I could open it. I didn't chase it. I started the engine and pulled away. The house shrank in the mirror until it was just another block I didn't belong to anymore. "You'll come back." My father's voice replayed in my head, not as a threat, as a certainty. He had always spoken that way, as if my choices were extensions of his will. I said it out loud, just to hear how it sounded. "No, I won't." The words didn't shake. They settled. At a red light, another memory surfaced. My father at the kitchen table years ago, sliding bills toward me. "You're good with numbers," he'd said. "Help us keep things stable." Stable had turned into permanent. Help had turned into expectation. I realized then what had actually happened at dinner. I hadn't been punished for saying no. I had been dismissed for failing to perform. I wasn't a daughter being cast out. I was a revenue stream that had stopped flowing. The light turned green. I drove forward, not toward anywhere specific, just away from the role they had written for me. The silence in the car felt different now. Not empty. Clear. I didn't go home. I parked on a quiet side street and sat there with the engine running, the dashboard clock glowing back at me. My phone rested in my palm, heavier than it should have been. I unlocked it and opened my banking app. I scrolled past my checking account, past my savings. I went straight to the recurring transfers. There it was, exactly where it had been for years, labeled in neutral language like it wasn't the backbone of my family's life. Property operations. $3,100, scheduled on the 1st of every month. Another $600 marked for taxes and maintenance. I could hear my father's voice as clearly as if he were sitting beside me. "It's temporary. Then later. It's just until your brother gets on his feet. Then finally. This is what family does." I tapped the transfer. The screen expanded, calm and polite. "Next payment due in 4 days." My thumb hovered. Not because I was unsure, but because I understood the weight of what I was about to do. This wasn't a tantrum. This was a decision. I pressed edit, then cancel series. A warning appeared, asking me to confirm that I wanted to stop this recurring payment. It didn't mention consequences. It didn't say foreclosure or panic or phone calls in the middle of the day. It just waited. I thought of my father standing at the table, telling me the house carried his name. I thought of myself carrying the cost. I left. I said quietly to the empty car, "So the money leaves too." I confirmed the cancellation. The transfer vanished. My projected balance for the next month jumped by several $1,000s. It was immediate, clean, final. I locked the phone and set it face down on the seat. No announcement. No explanation. I put the car in drive and pulled back into traffic, already moving faster than they realized. The hotel room was quiet in a way my parents' house never had been. No television murmuring in the background. No footsteps pacing overhead. I set my bag down and opened my laptop on the small desk by the window. I logged into my accounts with the same efficiency I used at work. My salary sat there in plain numbers. Steady and respectable. $132,000 a year. Enough to live comfortably. Enough to breathe. Yet the balance in my checking account told a different story. I scrolled back through my own expenses and felt a familiar tightening in my chest. Rent for a small apartment I barely used. Second-hand furniture I told myself was temporary. Groceries bought on sale. Weeks where I skipped dinners out because I had sent enough money already. I could hear my father again. "We're just trying to protect what we built." And my reply from years ago. Softer then. I understand. I hadn't understood. I had complied. I opened a spreadsheet I hadn't touched in months, the one I jokingly labeled personal austerity. Line after line showed how small I had made my life to keep theirs intact. My phone buzzed, a missed call from my mother. No voicemail. I didn't call back. I closed the laptop instead. For the first time, the quiet didn't feel like absence. It felt like space I had paid for without realizing it. My brother Michael had always been described as on the verge. That was my father's favorite phrase. "He's close," George would say, tapping the table like he was emphasizing a point in a meeting. One good break and everything changes. Michael was in his late 30s and still living off that promise. One year it was a consulting firm. Another year, an online venture he swore would scale fast. None of them lasted long enough to make money, but all of them lasted long enough to drain it. At family dinners, my father spoke about Michael's failures like they were temporary setbacks. "Entrepreneurs take risks," he'd say. "That's how success is built." When I worked late nights and skipped vacations, he called it stability. "Someone has to be responsible," he told me once, not looking up from his paperwork. Michael used to joke about it. "You're the safety net," he said, smiling like it was a compliment. I hadn't laughed. In my father's mind, Michael was an investment. I was infrastructure. I didn't get praise for keeping things afloat. I got silence, because silence meant the system was working. I remembered standing in the kitchen months earlier, bills spread across the counter. "We need a little more this month," my father had said. "Just until things turn around." "They always turn around for him," I said. My father met my eyes then, sharp and warning. "Careful. Allison, don't confuse support with resentment." I hadn't been resentful. I had been useful. The call came a week later. My father's name lit up my phone, steady and familiar, like nothing had changed. "Allison," he said when I answered. His voice was calm, controlled. "We should talk." "I thought we already did," I replied. "This doesn't need to stay like this," he said. "Just you and me. No drama." I leaned against the kitchen counter in my new apartment. Listening. "About what?" "About fixing things," he said. "About keeping the family intact." I could picture him saying it, hands folded, tone reasonable. This was how he won arguments. He made them sound like compromises. "You told me to leave," I said. That wasn't a misunderstanding. He exhaled slowly. That was a heated moment. Families have those. You don't throw everything away because of one night. I didn't throw anything away. I said, I walked out when you told me to. Silence stretched between us. Then his voice hardened just enough to register. You know what's at stake. The house, the name. I know, I said. I've been paying for it. That's not what I meant. He snapped, the calm slipping. You're being rigid. No, I said. I'm being clear. He paused, recalibrating. Come by tomorrow. We'll talk like adults. I ended the call without agreeing. For a moment, my chest felt tight, like the pull of an old habit. Then it loosened. I stayed where I was. The call came in the middle of my workday. I watched my phone vibrate across the desk until it stopped, then started again. My father didn't leave voicemails when he was angry. He expected compliance. I answered on the third ring. What did you do? He demanded, skipping any pretense. The bank called this morning. I didn't do anything. I said, I stopped paying for a house I was told to leave. His breath came sharp through the line. You don't get to do that. That money was for the property. That money was mine. I said, you made it clear I wasn't welcome there. This is bigger than you, he snapped. That house represents this family, our history. I know, I said. I've been funding it for 5 years. He raised his voice, losing control. We're behind. The notice says delinquent. Do you understand what you've done? I understand exactly what I've done. I replied, I followed your instructions. You're trying to punish us. He said, you're being cruel. I'm being consistent. I said, you ended the relationship. I ended the payments. He laughed once, sharp and humorless. Families fight. That doesn't mean obligations disappear. Obligations don't survive eviction. I said. There was a pause. Then his tone shifted. Desperate now. Fix this. Transfer the money back. We'll talk later. I won't. I said. You owe us, he said, almost pleading. I audited that debt. I replied, it's paid. The line went silent. When he spoke again, his voice was low and unfamiliar. You're going to regret this. I already regret waiting so long, I said, and ended the call. I set the phone down and returned to my work, my hands steady. The system was finally reacting to the truth. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I had my laptop open and my coffee untouched. I logged into the property account the way I always had, with credentials my father never bothered to change because he never imagined I would use them against him. The balance was low, alarmingly low. That can't be right, I said out loud, scrolling through the transaction history. My transfers were there, steady and predictable. $3,100 every month. 600 more marked for taxes and maintenance. 5 years of consistency. The mortgage payments were not. They appeared sporadically. Partial amounts sent just often enough to delay consequences. Enough to buy time. Enough to keep the illusion intact. I felt my chest tighten as I followed the money further down the ledger. Transfers to my brother began appearing months earlier. Small at first. 500 here. 1,000 there. Labeled vaguely, like errands. Then I saw the line that stopped me cold. A down payment of $22,000 to an auto dealership. No, I whispered. I clicked deeper. Monthly lease payments followed. $890, withdrawn like clockwork. I cross-referenced the amount with the dealership's inventory and didn't need long to find the match. A luxury pickup truck, fully loaded, nearly $60,000. My phone rang. My father again. I didn't answer. I sat back. The truth settling with a weight I couldn't shake. He hadn't lost control of the house. He had made a choice. He had taken the money I sent to keep a roof over their heads and redirected it to preserve my brother's image. This wasn't mismanagement. It wasn't desperation. It was theft. When my father called again, I finally answered. I know where the money went, I said before he could speak. Silence. You didn't choose the house, I continued. You chose him. He exhaled sharply. You don't understand. I do, I said. Perfectly. I closed the laptop. The numbers had already done their job. I met my father one last time in the lobby of my office building. He stood across from me without his usual certainty, his shoulders stiff, his voice restrained. We can still fix this, he said. Sell something, restructure. Keep the house. I already did the restructuring, I replied. I removed myself. He frowned. You're really going to let it all collapse? I'm letting it become honest, I said. Those are not the same thing. He lowered his voice. After everything we gave you, I held his gaze. You didn't give. You billed. For a moment, he looked like he might argue. Then his eyes dropped. The silence told me more than words ever had. When I turned to leave, he said, You owe this family. I stopped. I audited the debt. I said, It's paid in full. I walked out without waiting for a reply. Months later, I pass houses like the one we lost. I don't slow down. I don't feel the pull. My life is quieter now, but it finally fits. The money I earn stays where it belongs. The peace costs more than I expected, but it lasts. If any part of this feels familiar, stay with this channel. Share this story with someone who needs permission to choose themselves. You're not alone, and neither was I when I finally walked away.